You're listening to an Airwave Media Podcast.
Today's show is brought to you by Vanguard. As we step into a new year, it's the perfect time for all the advisors listening to think about how to set up your clients for success. One way to do that is to level up your fixed income strategy. But bonds are tricky, the market is huge, rates shift, and risks hide in plain sight. That's why having a partner with scale and expertise matters. Vanguard brings both. You don't want a roller coaster ride for investors. Some managers are out there promising big returns, but they usually come with big risks. Vanguard takes a steadier approach. They don't go all in on risky bets. They focus on reliability. They focus on consistency. So, if you're looking to give your clients consistent results year in and year out, go see the record for yourself at Vanguard.com/audio. That's Vanguard.com/audio. All investing is subject to risk. Vanguard Marketing Corporation, distributor. According to Robert Caro's book, Johnson would call aides into the bathroom while he was taking a shower and continue to talk without pause. The water would be running, steam filling the room. You were standing there. You were trying not to look anywhere, trying not to concentrate on what he was saying. He knew exactly what he was doing as he talked to you from the shower. And Johnson would be shouting questions through the shower curtain, demanding answers immediately. Now, we don't know which aide that Robert Caro's talking about, but it's probably Bill Moyers, Jack Valente, George Reedy. While we're on the subject of the shower, a lot of people have pointed out an interesting detail in Robert Caro's book, Passage of Power. I hope we get another book, by the way. I really do. But Caro has talked a little bit about Johnson as president, just for like 1 year, his first year as president, in Passage of Power. And one of the things he talks about is how he just made the White House plumber, Reds Arrington, his name because of his bright red hair, his life a living hell because of his request for extreme water pressure with multiple nozzles, so like water hitting him all over at one time. And one of the requests he made is like he wanted a switch that would make it either extreme cold or extreme hot. He never wanted it warm or lukewarm or anything like that. He wanted extreme cold or extreme hot with the flip of a switch. According to Arrington's account, he told him, "If I can move 10,000 troops in a day, you can certainly fix the bathrooms the way I want it." You know, it's 20 years, okay? So for those of you listening, that's 2006 when this podcast started. It really did. And I don't know what else to say about it. It's kind of crazy. That means that there's been at least an episode a month. At least something has been put out a month, usually much more, for 20 years. I started on a desktop computer and a very poor microphone. So I'm rerunning a few episodes this year, a bunch of them actually. And one of them is going to be LBJ and the cell phone thing. So we're going to talk about that. So we reran the episode on Lyndon Johnson and his, quote, cell phone. It's really a radio phone. It's a car phone. But nonetheless, I just wanted to talk about how he utilized technology for politics. And why would an episode like that be relevant today? That episode is from 2016. You hear me mention Hillary Clinton, Elizabeth Warren, who were candidates talked about in 2016. And I think there's a lot of reasons that it's still useful today. A couple of things I want to point out. One is the youth of Lyndon Johnson. That's not something that we quite understand. I don't think people quite get it, that this is an actor that reaches the zenith of his politics while he's in his 50s. We think of him kind of as an old man because of his look. He always looks a little haggard, to be honest. Guy becomes president in 63. He's 55 years old. 46 when he becomes majority leader of the Senate. So in any other context, how do we think of people who are like 46 and in politics? Pretty young, like young whiz kids. And if we think about that now, imagine what we think about when we're talking about the 1950s. So it's you don't think about Lyndon Johnson as this young guy, especially because he's always associated with Kennedy, who's younger. But that really is the case. And so we pointed out, too, how he felt more in league with Eisenhower than some of the other Republicans at times, and than some of his own Democrats at times. And he was actually upset, according to Robert Caro, he's actually upset when Eisenhower doesn't think of him as a presidential candidate. You always have this quest in some quarters, particularly Democratic side, for this liberal president. When's there's going to be a liberal president? And I think what you see is what you get with Kennedy. Was Kennedy a liberal? He was a liberal in some ways. He's a conservative in other ways. On a different podcast, we talked about how one of the ways he gets the nomination over traditional liberals is he courts some Southerners. Like when he's in that VP contest in 56, when he's building a national name kind of for the first time with Kefauver, he's pointing out how more amenable he might be to the South than Kefauver, who's from the South. And he's getting delegates in Mississippi, for instance. And one of the things he goes to the right on is a jury service issue on a civil rights bill. I don't want to get into the specifics, but it's enough that in 1960, Eleanor Roosevelt, still alive at this point, her car accident and death would happen later, but in 1960, she corners him. It's in 56 when JFK is running for vice president. Eleanor Roosevelt corners him and says, "Why did you support this?" And she's on it. And a lot of people see. So my point would just be that you see in this early example where there's a liberal guy, they're probably going to have to work with the Lyndon Johnsons of the world, or they're not going to win an American election. Now, where you stand in positions and issues might have changed since 1960, but that basic dynamic, like if you're one of these people that want an AOC or a Mandami now, they're going to have to work with like a Josh Shapiro or even somebody, maybe a Fetterman, somebody who is even more conservative. You see that. It was one of the most successful tickets in 1960. It pulled a victory out when really you could have argued after Eisenhower, a little slowing in the end, but you could have had another Republican term, and you didn't. And that was a lot to do with the choice of Lyndon Johnson as a VP. He probably wouldn't have been picked as VP a second time, but we'll never quite know that. It's always fun to talk about Lyndon Johnson. And I'm going to say this, I'll probably get like stones hurled at me and things like that, but it's always fun to talk about him. It's always fun to hear his phone calls. But I think what you're witnessing is a president who in contemporary terms was viewed by some people in Washington, particularly after JFK dies, by some of the Kennedy people, as, way too aggressive, way too strong, way too overbearing, didn't really like him, didn't think he belonged with the Kennedy ticket. And the way that people complain about him and describe him in the 60s is the way a lot of people would talk about a Trump-like figure today, somebody who would use all of the powers of the office. Now, he stayed within the norms of the 1960s, but particularly in his inside game, if you listen to some of those phone calls and badgering people and stuff and telling like staff who from the Kennedy side, if you don't stay in the White House, you're young enough, I'll draft you and send you to Vietnam. That's pretty hardcore stuff. At one point, he's making an announcement, and the TV networks leak it early, so he changes the person that he's picking for a position just because he's so mad at the networks. Another example is like Walter Cronkite. Not Walter Cronkite, Dan Rather. He thinks that because he's from Texas, Rather will give him a nice shake, and he really badgers him. and rather describes this in his biography, that then they end up like bickering, and he puts a lot of pressure on him to be, and he would work the press in that way. He would have favorites. Lyndon Johnson also did a lot of financial dealing that hasn't been fully looked at, even by me enough. And he associated with people that ended up in some scandals. So, by the time you're getting to that 68 convention, there's a good chunk of his party that does not want him to walk out there with the birthday cake that he wanted, that does not want to, get too interested in his biography film, and they want to move on from him. And that's not what you see with like an Obama. And I doubt in whatever happens with Trump, I doubt that in a Republican convention that would happen. So that's what you got to consider with Lyndon Johnson. I think it's important to look at. You have a very overbearing presidential figure. And if you just, don't look at it with 2026 eyes, look at it with like 1966 eyes. And, that's one of the things that I think is interesting. Who can win a presidential election? Okay, so predictions made in like 2020 or 2024 about the 2028 election, you got to think about that in 1960 or 1964 and what they would predict. And that Nixon would come back wasn't really predicted on that side. And then what ended up happening with the Democrats wasn't well predicted either. But even looking at 1960 and Kennedy-Johnson ticket, that is not something that I believe in the 1950s people would expect. That this guy, the son of a influential father in the Roosevelt cabinet, but somebody kind of associated with a more pro-German policy than a pro-English policy, not as friendly to the UK, but UK ambassador type thing. Very rich, not everybody liked that in the Democratic Party, not well liked by Truman, runs for VP in 56 and loses, runs for VP and loses, that he's going to lead the presidential ticket in 1960, I think you would have thought it was crazy. So surprises can happen. And then as coalitions are built and issues change, the electoral result can be different. Those are all things that I observed that could be useful for someone listening to that cast today. Thanks to Peter J. for liking this rerun. I never know. Look, I have enough episodes now, to be honest with you, that I could do an episode every day of the year and not have 2 episodes be the same. I'm not going to do that, and I don't think all the episodes are good anymore. I don't always agree with everything I said in the past, so I can't do that. This was one that I thought was perfect for a rerun. We're going to do more of them on the Patreon.